Hello and welcome to our 2011-2012 opening of the Masick Report. Joining us today are four panelists who will share their thoughts on the global issue that is known but little talked about. Our panelists are Mr. Jeff Seymour and Mrs. Tracy Forstrom, both members of the Masick English Department. And our student panelists are seniors Aaron DeVita and Nick Davies. The issue they will share discussion about is the global dilemma of consumable water for more than 1 billion people. The problem of available, usable water sources is a prime contributor to the spiral of poverty in hundreds of underdeveloped economies around the world. One well-respected celebrity, Matt Damon, has taken some strong personal steps to broaden awareness of this matter. Damon has paired up with Gary White, who has founded organizations such as Water.org, to help resolve the extensive human need. Damon has made extensive efforts to address this need from the ground level up. He has taken walks with young children carrying 5-gallon buckets, walking an hour to get water from a dirty, murky well. One is left to wonder, with all the power of developed economies to engage in long-term expensive acts of nation building, why is the grassroots matter of the lack of resources such as water prompting a spiral of poverty so sparsely addressed? Please remember that this is a discussion, not a debate. Each panelist will lead off conversation on one of 4 questions, but any panelist may interject when they are inspired to do so. Our first question is simple, predictable, and essential. What were the initial thoughts you had after reading the article, "Can This Man Save This Girl?" from the July-August issue of Fast Company? Nick, why don't you start us off and share what your initial reaction was?
I was immediately inspired by his devotion. I think it was important that Ellen McGirt, who wrote the article, she talked about how today most of the celebrities are in the news and they are celebrities for what they do wrong. So I think it's important that Matt Damon is starting to turn that around, and he's becoming a role model instead. And I think that's important because celebrities are always in the eyes of the public. And now that he's doing something positive, I think many will follow. So I think it's a good step in the right direction.
Do you recall the little passage about the inspiration he got from his mom?
Yep.
And what was your thought on that?
I think now what he's doing is because of his placement, he is taking this inspiration that he has gathered from his mom, and now he's spreading it around to everyone else. Because
she went out of her way to do an episode of assistance in Central America, right? Mm-hmm. And actually made herself learn Spanish. Well, I think that's kind of nice. You may have a thought about this, Mrs. Forstrom, but you don't often hear, particularly in the white male circle, how strong mothers have such an impact.
I thought it was excellent. Having 2 small children of my own, I do a lot of community service work with the Girl Scouts, and it's been very important to me to make sure that my children, I have 1 of each, so of course my daughter will be a Girl Scout and will be involved, but my son as well, I want to make sure even at a young age that it's instilled in them that there's a sense of community and a sense of belonging to something larger than themselves. So I thought it was great that he was brought along on these trips with his mother, that she shared that sense of belonging and community with them, and a larger world view, and that he almost feels like he's compelled to have to give back.
I think that comment you made about the larger world view is really an important factor, because it's so easy to isolate yourself to about a 20-mile radius of where you live and go to school, and you really don't think on that spectrum. So I think that's very significant because it helps instill self-worth, confidence, and you become someone who's willing to take a risk and try something in life. Do you have any comment you wanted to offer?
I thought also, on top of that, they're in the light for a good way, the celebrities. He's not just donating money and giving money to a cause. He's really getting out there and helping the organization. He's not just throwing money and being the face of it. He's really getting his hands on and doing good for the people.
So not doing it to enhance his celebrityship.
Right.
Yes, okay, Mr. Seymour, any comment?
I think it's important that he's doing this rather than some other causes. There are a lot of charities that celebrities sometimes glom onto that really aren't quite as charitable as they're meant to be. And this is important work he's doing, because if you read closely, they're actually talking about changing the way these communities are run, changing how they go about their business, which is a really, really difficult thing to do. They're not just building wells and moving on. Some of the things they're talking about is very important. I think it's very challenging, very difficult. I wish them well, but at least they're trying.
Thank you very much. Well, now let's move to our second question. What are your thoughts about Gary White, founder of Water.org and Water Credit, responding to something said to him while working in Latin America? He was told, "Your life should be about finding the intersection of the world's greatest need and your greatest passion." Mrs. Forsman, share your thoughts on that.
I love that quote. I think as a teacher, we inspire students every day to do what they love. My hope for everyone is that they can find something that they love to do for the rest of their lives, that they can get up every day and go to work and be happy about going there and doing the work that they are going to do. What I especially like about this quote is the first part of it, that your life should be about finding the intersection of the world's greatest need. So not only doing what you love, but also helping in the greatest way that you possibly can. And I sort of feel like that's, what more could you ask for?
Yeah, it remind me of something that my grandmother used to always tell me when raising me, and that is the hardest lesson in life is to learn that it's not all about me. And it's so easy to get entrapped, I think, in that mindset of self-centeredness, of meanness. That being selfless is not an easy chore. She used to also say the toughest job in the world is to be a good, kind person, because you have to make a lot of conscious decisions that take other people into account. Do you have any reaction or thought about that, Nick?
Well, one thing about what Mrs. Forsman was saying, I think that it's excellent that Gary White found his intersection, but I like how he also found it and connected it with someone else's. Like, he connected with Matt Damon, and together they made it even more powerful than it would have been with him alone. So I think that's also an important aspect of what he's doing.
The value of sharing your passion?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Any other comment from either you or Mr. Seymour?
Well, I'd just like to add that this quote is something that may take a lifetime for you to actually realize. I mean, I know plenty of people who are still searching for both the greatest need and their greatest passion. But I think that people should keep looking. I mean, there are many people who actually don't find their great passion until late in life. And you find that many people go on to have second and third careers now, and sometimes it's not until late in life that they get this confluence of meeting people's needs and having that square up with their greatest passion. So it's always worth looking. It's a struggle. It's a quest that may take for a long time, but once you get there, it's worth getting there.
Aaron, what do you think? Do you think in your school experience that we as educators, we as a school, as a body, do we do the kinds of things that motivate you to want to discover your passion? Are we doing the kind of things we should be doing, or do you feel a lot of your generation's missing that?
I actually think that with school and with teachers that we are having teachers that want us to find our passions, because I know a lot of teachers I've had in the past, they always say, because kids always say they want a job that makes them money, but teachers, I've heard time and time again, teachers saying so many times, you don't want a job that just makes money, you want a job that you have a passion for, that like Ms. Fortune said, you want to go to every morning, and something that those two have found that actually help people and make the world a better place. It's not just about the little things, it's about the greater things.
So we have to continue to pursue our willfulness as teachers and as a school to have you young people not just be taking into consideration what you want to be, but who you want to be. Who you want to be, and knowing that and having that passion, I think, strengthens your capacity to be happier at what you end up doing, no matter what that might be. So these, I think, are motivating ideas. Mm-hmm. All right, now we should move to our third question. What facts identified in the article impressed you the most? What is your assessment of Damon's decision to become engaged in addressing the global issue of poverty? What makes his choice an action different from those taken traditionally by celebrities? Mr. Seymour, why don't you share your thoughts on that?
Well, what struck me is the stories told in this article and the facts recited in this article regrettably seem unchanged since I was a young person in the 70s and I was in college. I mentioned earlier to Mr. Bonner that I had colleagues in New York who were working in the Peace Corps in the 70s, and many of them were sent to parts of the world, and they were brought in specifically to work on water projects. And I still remember two of my friends arguing at a party about who built the Better Water Project, one guy down in Haiti or one guy in India, and one guy saying, if somebody could give me $5 million, I would have had that whole island filled with water. So it's something that people have been arguing about forever. And then when I went to college, we, as a school, we got very involved with Oxfam America, which, and one of the initial things that Oxfam America was very, very strong on was water projects. Nevertheless, here we are 100 years later, not quite 100 years later, and we're still dealing with the same problems. And I think it's great that Damon and his colleagues are trying to address it in a certain way. But my concern is that this is a problem that continues to get worse. And I think he has some good solutions, and the idea of getting community involvement in water projects is important. But what still sticks in my head is there's got to be some larger questions that have to be addressed. And maybe there's a lack of water because there's political issues or other issues that are beyond the scope of his projects. Nevertheless, what he's doing is good. It's clearly good, but it's something that's always going to be with us, and I wish there were permanent solutions to this problem.
Do you find it kind of interesting that, other, like Aaron had mentioned before, other celebrities who do large donations or throw a concert, they get a lot of media coverage, and here's something that, outside of being in Fast Company magazine, no one's heard about.
I think this is the new wave of what concerned celebrities are really doing. It goes all the way back to the Live Aid concert with the guy from whatever that band was years ago, and then Bono does it, and you see Sean Penn does a little bit of it. They get some publicity, but they're more concerned with the end result. I think what Damon is doing is great, lending his time and a little bit of his money and his name to a cause that will take on a life of its own without him. I know Sean Penn was on some show, but he doesn't seek publicity for what he's done in Haiti. But he's drawn a lot of money to Haiti, and I think that's a good thing. You don't need the Jerry Lewis telethon model anymore. I mean, that's completely outdated. I think that if a celebrity knows how to manage his image and manage his name for the cause of good, then it's a good thing.
And I went online, went onto YouTube, and saw the interview with Damon about this, and it was really inspiring that he was just so direct, candid, explicit about what he was trying to do. And I think, again, as you indicated, not worried about enhancing his celebrityship. Mm-hmm. Anyone else have a reflective thought about what Mr. Seymour just said? Do you have anything?
I think the most fascinating thing about what they're doing, and we've hinted at it, but I'm not sure that our audience knows, is the fact that they are putting this business of getting clean water and good sanitation into the hands of the people and allowing them to own what it is that's happening, and with the philosophy that with the ownership that they will then better maintain these wells or these public toilet facilities. I'm not doing this sort of work myself, so I haven't been able to see it in action. Mm-hmm. But in theory, it seems to me, well, of course, that makes sense. Give people the sense of ownership and pride, and they will hopefully rise to the occasion. But I think what Mr. Seymour brought up about there being potentially underlying political implications and other issues at stake here to explain why it is that these numbers have not changed over the last 40 years. I think that it's important to look at that. I hadn't thought about that before, but I think that it makes you realize the scope of this problem. It is just so large.
And it is a global problem, even in many developed economies, because one of the statistics mentioned in the article, if my memory is correct, was that of the world's water sources right now, only 1% is consumable without treatment. And so that includes even ourselves. And I think eventually it's going to just come right to our face, and we're going to have to say, what do we do? Because there is no way to survive without water. I often wonder why we don't put more effort into desalination plants, because most of the earth is covered with water. Mm-hmm. So you think certain things are obvious, and then as both you indicated, sometimes the politics and greed and quest of power interrupts all this logical action that could make the place better. And we can't stop the population of the world from getting to 7 billion or 8 billion. It's going to happen. And we have to recognize that. Any comment from either of you, Aaron or Nick?
I think also one thing about what Damon's doing is he's empowering the people. He's not and he's setting up like a system that they will be continuously able to get it. I think what Mr. Seymour said in my class one time, which I don't know the exact quote, but you can give a man a fish, but if you teach him how to fish, then he'll have it until for his entire life. I think that's somewhat what the quote is. And then, so I think that's an important part because they're also talking about how a lot of times celebrities will go, they'll build a well, they'll take a picture with all like the community around them, they'll leave, and then the well will break down, it'll be worse off than it was before they started it. So I think it's important now that they're putting the power within the hands of the community, they're giving them pride, and they're expecting them to do it.
What do you think?
I also thought for some of the interesting facts, as Mr. Seymour was saying, that numbers haven't changed over the years, but if you read some of the facts saying every 20 seconds a child dies from a water-related disease, and all these just horrible facts that they're just not changing, and it's good that the word's getting out there, and hopefully he'll bring more coverage and more people will see it and want to help and be recognized, because I know before this article, I didn't know a lot of this stuff about water, and it's just like a good thing to know for everyone to know to start helping out with.
You know, and I think if you look into something like the Chronicle of Higher Education, I'm very grateful that many of our colleges and universities are engaged in programs that mirror the Peace Corps and mirror what he's doing. And once again, it's just something that unless you read the Chronicle or you read your alumni magazine, no one knows what's going on, including other things such as green roofs. There are many schools using, literally planting gardens on rooftops. And what it does is make the building cooler in the warm weather, warmer in the cold weather, and it makes wash off and melt off of rain and snow less damaging. And they can even grow camellia, which is a weed that eventually you can use in the same way we use corn silk to make carpeting that is stain resistant without using chemicals. So there's so many things, and yet it seems like only the gloom stories get to the major networks. You know, and I sometimes feel disturbed, to say the least, about that. Well, it's time to address our fourth question. That has two parts. What are your thoughts about the importance Damon and White place upon using their assets to persuade local lenders to take the risk of lending to the poor once they prove they're ready to take ownership of the project and pay back at levels they can afford? Do you find it interesting that they emphasize the emphasis placed upon these programs can benefit women and bring them jobs and dignity? Aaron, what do you think?
I think Ms. Forstrom and Nick touched a little bit on this, but there was one really strong quote in the article that said, villagers will then own the project at the end of the exercise. They're proud of it, and they have done it themselves. I think that, like Nick was saying, a lot of the celebrities, when they go and they just build the well and take the pictures, it'll break down because someone just came and built it for them. But when you give them the opportunity to talk to bankers and get the loans and really understand what's going on and get the knowledge and just keep building and be able to do it themselves and build systems themselves, they won't want it to break down because all their hard work will go to waste. So they're really going to want to keep it for themselves and just keep building on it. And the interesting part about women, if everyone's getting the knowledge, also women will be able to get the knowledge, and women and children, they'll be able to educate their children more, and it'll just bring more knowledge all around, and knowledge is power for everyone, so they can just start bettering themselves and not rely on others to better themselves.
What do you think of the fact that he talked about women being the ones who would collect the money to help pay the loan back?
Doesn't he, I believe that I read it in here, he mentions about projects and how if they're aimed at women, they are more likely to succeed. And so if you have women that are on board of the project, the statistics show that the project, if they're on board, that it will most likely be successful. I thought that was fascinating. I hadn't thought about that, but
that's an empowerment we don't normally consider.
Yep.
So, any reaction, Mr. Seymour?
Well, I certainly think putting all this in the hands of women is probably a good idea because everybody knows that men are shiftless and lazy.
Well, I certainly know that we've been accused of that on a frequent basis, that's to say the least. Nick, any thoughts?
Yeah, I like how they do put the they put this pride in the hands of the women. They're kind of in control of this part. But it along with that, it empowers the entire community. It's not just the women. The women can then translate it on to their children. They can translate it on to anyone else. And I think it overall benefits the overall community.
You know, I don't know if you heard on the news, but in Denver, they're having a small brewery beer craft festival. And 40,000 people paid up to go there. And the small brewers all paid $600 to have their own little stand set up. And the founder of Samuel Adams Beer is encouraging this, and he's doing two things. He's offering $10,000 microloans for anyone who wants to start up their own brewery, and he's also creating a coaching force who will help these aspired entrepreneurs to learn how to get the business off the ground. Now, I'm saying this because isn't it comical that we're talking about microloans for building beer, and yet in situations like this, you know, organizations like water.org almost have to bribe local lenders to loan out from just getting water. So I just thought that was kind of a humorous fact.
I liked there was a fact in the article about in one community they went to a local lender, and that lender realized that this group that had borrowed was so successful at paying the loan back that then that lender himself was going out into the community at large or other communities and saying, you should lend to your people too because they know what they're doing. They've got their act together, then they're a good risk to take. And that's what you would hope would come from this, that they would just start spreading the word themselves and realizing, oh, you know, this is not such a bad idea.
And then I think the operative word there is the risk, you know. Trust
Certainly.
that you can survive and handle the risk. Well, allow me to ask each of you one more question. Do you believe that there is some kind of moral obligation developed economies have to act on the issue of poverty and water? Mr. Seymour?
I think they probably have an obligation to act on the issue of poverty and water. You know, in many parts of the world, water is power. Even in the United States, water is power. I mean, we're lucky we have abundant water here, but you head to the West and it really becomes a different issue. And I think that developed economies should encourage other economies to be more equitable with respect to water rights and who gets water and how they get water, because it's been an issue throughout history. And, you know, you see it in literature, you see it in movies. Just remember when Omar Sharif rides on the screen in Lawrence of Arabia, the first thing he does is kill somebody for stealing his water.
Right.
I mean, it's an important issue around the world. We're lucky here. We're very lucky. And I think some of the countries with wealth should help the countries that are less wealthy find new ways to deal with this situation.
And I think sometimes what you say, even within our own United States, we forget. I mean, think about Texas this summer and Oklahoma having 60 days of 3-digit figure temperatures and all the fires that broke out, you know. And as you said, it is truly a problem that transcends the entire globe. What's your thought, Mrs. Forstner?
I'm reminded of, I think it's, you can help me on this, Teddy Roosevelt with the idea of stewardship. Am I right about
That's
that?
correct.
It's something I remember from high school. That idea about those who are more fortunate helping those who are less fortunate. I'm completely on board with that.
Nick, what do you think?
I have to agree with both of what they say. I think it's just an obligation. Like, if you see someone in need, you should help because it's. I mean, going back to like the Teddy Roosevelt thing and everything. If you see someone less fortunate, you should always help them, and then you never know what's going to come back to you in return. Not to be self-centered, but just an overall beneficial community will be a better way.
How about you, Aaron?
I agree with what everyone said too. It is kind of a moral obligation, and to have something Mr. Seymour said, like, we're very lucky here. We do have more of an abundance of water, and if you go kind of compare it with Matt Damon, he is wealthy and he's a celebrity, so he's using that to his advantage. He has the abilities and he has the extra things that other people don't, so he's helping them. And for us, we have the water and we have the knowledge, so why not go out there and help like we're saying that Matt Damon is doing?
But what if I play an antagonist here and I say, look, we're still in the grips of a Great Recession, you know? I like the idea, no one can dispute the need of water, etc. But why don't we just focus internally? Why don't our celebrities go to Appalachia? Why are we going to Africa? Should our moral obligation be at home first? Can we do both?
I think the answer lies in literature, just like John Donne said, and do not ask for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. One man's suffering is everybody's suffering, so we should do something about it no matter where we are.
You obviously are in agreement.
Completely.
Okay, well then I certainly stand in my place. All right. Well, upon that comment, I'm afraid we'll have to close our discussion. We hope you, our viewers, have found this discussion interesting and informative. We also hope that our shared ideas will motivate you to look further into this international concern. On behalf of our panelists, Mr. Seymour, Mrs. Forstrom, Nick, and Aaron, I want to say thanks, and we at the Massac Report look forward to you joining us on all of our forthcoming shows. Good day and best wishes to you all. Thank you.